Hey guys, what's happening? So just when you thought we was done talking about some Ghost Rider, because we've done quite a bit of that lately with Cosmic Ghost Rider, but now with Marvel Legacy giving us the origin of the Ghost Rider from 1 million BC, you already know we had to get into this. And shout out to Elijah who had asked me yesterday to do this video, because during that time I was reading a bunch of Thunderbolts, and when I went back and read this, I was like, oh man, it lines up perfectly with the last two videos, plus another one I got coming up. So it only made sense to fit this one in between the two. And towards the end of the video, I'll also show you guys exactly where this Ghost Rider is in relation to the currently running Infinity Wars event. But first and foremost, before we get to that, just know, as far as the history of Ghost Rider, some things will be different. And I say that because I know a lot of the older Ghost Rider fans from probably the 90s or whatever, or possibly even decades before that, are like, 1 million BC? This is wrong. This is all wrong. And I just wanted to put that out there for you guys. I'm sure we got a lot of the same questions, to which I'm sure we will get the answers to as the different Avengers issues roll along. But either way, aside from that, what I also want to do is give a few of the newer readers the origin of Ghost Rider, and not the origin of Johnny Blaze, but the origin of how Ghost Riders came to be prior to Marvel Legacy. And so real quick, the way this was done in Marvel Comics, back in the days of Noah, after the flood, after the ark, and the flood which came to cleanse the world of sin, and it was after the flood where we got the rainbow, which was a sign from God that said he wouldn't destroy the world with water again, which pulls a lot from the biblical history that said the world would never be destroyed again with water, but then by fire. And so in Marvel Comics, after the flood, when man continued to sin, the spirits of vengeance were born. And in Marvel Comics, the spirits of vengeance, they were selected from bystanders who had witnessed innocent blood being shed, and they would be selected to become one of the spirits of vengeance. And the spirits of vengeance, they operated as like heaven's black ops team, and that served the purpose of them cleansing the world from evil with hellfire, but being able to operate without association with heaven, which would allow them to be efficient but also get down and dirty. But to also keep them concealed, they were overseen by Zadkiel, the archangel who sided with Lucifer but was given a lighter punishment for telling on Lucifer early on. But his job was to oversee the spirits of vengeance and keep them shrouded in mystery so that they would be a secret to the rest of the world. And from there, throughout history and a number of wars, the spirits of vengeance would pop up, and they were everywhere, from like your Trojan War to some would even say the Crusades. You even had some all the way up to World War I. They were everywhere. Like wherever vengeance was needed, these guys were there. And serving the purpose of not so much making the world a perfect place, but acting as a second judgment, if you will, to the evil upon the world, while at the same time secretly operating as a Black Ops Special Forces team, serving a form of judgment under the title Spirits of Vengeance. And so now the way that Mephisto was able to use this power, this happened when he was challenged by Zarathos for ownership of his realm. And at this point, Zarathos had collected a number of followers from the Spirits of Vengeance, promising them greater power when actually he was taking power from them. And so when he challenged Mephisto, Mephisto knew this, and he accepted the challenge knowing that the powers of the Spirits of Vengeance took greater effect on someone with a soul. And so knowing this, Mephisto accepted the challenge and chose Centurius, his servant, who had no soul, because he sold it to Mephisto, but he chosen to fight Zarathos as his champion because he knew by the time Zarathos figured out that this guy doesn't have a soul, that's why he's not burning, Mephisto would then have enough time to trap Zarathos within the soul chamber crystal, and from there bond a part of Zarathos with other souls so he could use them to do whatever he would ask them to do. And in each case, he would either use a soul that was desperate, a soul that was seeking vengeance, or in some cases both. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how your Ghost Rider first came about. And they weren't actually called Ghost Rider until like the 17th century, when Noble Kale, the Ghost Rider of that time, had been seen killing witch hunters and actual witches, and when that rumor spread, that's what they were known by. And so now in Marvel Legacy, this time going back to 1 million BC, to the days of early man where life was primitive, and very few at this time actually communicated with words. But we find this kid who is amongst these cavemen who, to him, they are everybody he knows. And even though they don't speak, they kind of communicate with grunts and pointing or whatever, but this kid stands out because he's the only one here who knows how to speak. And this is possibly from his mother's teaching, because he mentions she taught him everything he knew up until he could walk. And we see him placing his hand on top of what could have been her handprint before she had passed, but he keeps it a secret to everyone everyone else here that he actually knows how to speak. And because his mother had passed for some time now and he doesn't know who his father is, that along with hiding his ability to speak has kept him kind of to himself and isolated to an extent. And so these people, they never really leave this cave, because outside of this cave and what they call the Big White, the only things that survive out there are like apex predators, and that's in addition to the harsh cold environment. And so one day, this stranger just comes strolling in from the Big White, the deadly cold, challenging their pack leader, taking his position and just peeling through anyone else who challenged on the spot, making him the new pack leader over everyone who lived in this cave. But rather quickly, he identifies with this boy who's off to himself and usually seen next to a fire. But he can tell rather quickly that the boy can understand the words that he's saying. And when he goes to talk to him, he lets him know that he recognizes that he's different. And he's seen a number of packs where there were a few others like this boy and considered to be different. And going further, telling the boy that those are different are the masters of this world. But as for the rest, including the stranger's former pack, he said they only served one purpose, by helping them become what they're meant to be. And when the kid asked how did they do that and what happened to your old pack, the stranger responded that they helped by dying and being eaten. And dude just flip-flopped on the spot and ate everybody that this kid knew in life. And I'm telling you, the people of this cave were the only people that this kid knew, with the exception to those who have already died of old age or in the wilderness, or even of starvation. But he spares this kid's life, and on top of that gives him a name, which he didn't have because no one else around him could speak. But he gives the kid the name Ghost, telling him that he's dead and he doesn't even know it yet. But not because he's gonna eat him, but rather because he tells the kid, if you want to know my name, you gotta come find me. And he leaves the kid there with the challenge of, quote, becoming what he's supposed to be, since he's one of the different ones. But in that stranger's assumption, he leaves the kid there with a potential challenge, but more so the likeliness that he'll either starve or freeze to death. Hence the name Ghost, with him considering the kid to be dead already, but he doesn't know it. And so Ghost went after the stranger with really not much of an option, because if he stayed there, he'd probably come back and kill him. But he goes out to hunt down this stranger and seek revenge, nearly freezing to death until he's met by a serpent, who calls him by his new name, Ghost. And he tells him that he knows what he's out here looking for, to inflict pain, to serve punishment, to receive vengeance. And he tells Ghost that he can have all of this only if he says his name. And knowing that Ghost came from a people who stayed with the warmth and avoided the cold at all costs, and as a result, with him not making it this far in the brutal cold, he promises Ghost that he'll never feel cold again. But in order to receive these things, he has to say his name, and the serpent knows that he knows his name. And he tells him, and like with his last chilled breath, he says, Mephisto. And this is crazy, not just because the whole conversion of him into a spirit of vengeance, but it also begs the question, how did he know that name? And if I just had to take a wild guess, like just a shot in the dark, my guess would be the Celestials, who made some of these, quote, ape men different and given them higher intelligence than the others for whatever reason. And I'm not trying to go too deep saying he's a mutant just yet, though that could be the case, but it's a bit early to jump to conclusions. But after this happens, 5 years later, and this is 5 years of searching for that stranger that took out everybody in his cave, everybody he knew in life up until that point, seeking them out, riding possibly the same woolly mammoth that was there when he was converted, until he finally found this stranger. And what's crazy is the stranger recognized him from jump, and I'm not sure exactly if he's good with names or good with faces to why he recognized him, but neither one really makes sense. But I would go as far to say two things. One, he possibly recognized the smell, but also it's probably likely he's heard of this Ghost Rider seeking out vengeance for the past 5 years, and he kind of just put the story together. But finally, when he meets this stranger and he tells him his name, he tells him that his name is Wendigo. And it's like, man, we were just talking about Wendigo and where their curse came from. And I'll leave a link in the description for anyone who's new, telling you guys about the history of Tanarak, the father of Wendigo, and all the connections between that and the new Immortal Hulk series, because from everything this guy says, much of that still seems to be intact. And just for the record, Wolverine has mentioned that Wendigo are as strong as the Hulk, but way nastier. And we had talked about in a recent video many of their attributes and the connections to Wendigo and cannibalism, which are also consistent when he tells Ghost he's just doing what he needs to do to survive. And with the more he eats, the stronger he gets, and there's no telling how long this guy's been eating. But I'm pretty sure it's been for a while. And so now at this point, it's hard to say for certain if he is the first Wendigo. My guess would be that he is, mainly because Ghost didn't know his name, but he knew Mephisto's name. And from the knowledge that this kid was given from whoever it was given from, it came with knowledge of Mephisto, but not Wendigo. And so now if this tale holds a number of histories consistent, like a number of the changes in Marvel Legacy attempt to do, I would go as far to say that the knowledge that Ghost has, at the most, it does not exceed what the Celestials knew at their last visit. And as a result, the Wendigo curse that was made by the gods of the North is something that occurred in between visits, after their creation of Earth and man, meaning the only people who would know at this time of Wendigo would be the Northern gods, who created the Wendigo curse to stop cannibalism, possibly because the gods of the North, who are restricted to the Arctic Circle, were also made by the Celestials to preserve a level of order within this region. And that's why to Ghost, this stranger was a mystery. And that's just my guess, mainly going off the assumption that the Celestials picked some to have more knowledge or to be quote gifted or different, and those are the ones that they shared some information with, including that of Mephisto, who also predates the Earth. And that's just my guess, I just wanted to put that out there. But as far as this Wendigo, who I'm sure Wendigo is his actual name, but as far as this Wendigo, when he says the line that's usually known for the Hulk to say, he doesn't get to finish it because he's impaled by the woolly mammoth, but he breaks it like a candy cane and stabs the woolly mammoth with it, sending them both off of the cliff, while casually telling Ghost, I'll survive this, but will you? And as for the fall, absolutely, because when it comes to the spirit of vengeance, only God can destroy a Ghost Rider, which is primarily one of the original motivations for Mephisto seizing the opportunity to use the spirit of vengeance on his new champions and potentially secure his throne. But I'm pretty sure Wendigo don't know all that. But rather, I'm sure he was asking if he would survive being alone. And initially he thought he was alone until he heard a voice in his head, and soon realized after that it was Phoenix and Odin, who came to recruit Ghost to join them as their newest Avenger, so that he could help them fight the deranged Celestial that we had seen way back in the Marvel Legacy one-shot, which likely is the same one that Agamotto described as similar to the Celestials, but once again more deranged. And let me know what you guys think. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, your thoughts, your theories, and let me know how much do you think Marvel is keeping as far as the mythology of Ghost Rider in Marvel Legacy moving forward. And I'll let you know, in my opinion, I believe they're going to keep a lot of it, but just move the time frame, because Marvel Legacy is still using Doctor Strange Damnation, which they made a reference to in the Marvel Legacy Infinity Wars event when Thanos traveled back in time and visited Mephisto, which occurred during the storyline of Doctor Strange Damnation. And in Doctor Strange Damnation, we saw Ghost among all the other Ghost Riders, like ever. So I think it's pretty safe to say a lot of that history is still the same, and only some dates are going to be moved around. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Once again, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I got links in the description for videos further explaining the history of Wendigo, so smash that like button if you learned something new, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.